Hi, this is Mike. I've had several requests on YouTube for information about the Precision Matthews PM1440 lathe I have in a couple of the videos. So I'm going to try to do a quick and hopefully really quick little review of this and show you around the lathe and let you know what I think of it. So this is what the machine looks like, obviously in full view. It's a 14-inch swing, 40 inches between centers. I don't know if it would actually do that, but it's probably pretty close. This machine has variable frequency drive, so it's variable speed, and you can see here on the gearbox that it just has a low and a high and then a tachometer. Down here in the middle is a little rotary knob, and that's the speed control. I'll show that a little closer. It has an enclosed style gearbox, which is good because all the gears are running in oil. The bad part is you do have change gears when you don't have something that lines up with the gear that you have on there at present. Realistically, as little as I thread, I don't have to change them very often, so for me that's just fine. Not a big deal. In the same shot you can see the feed rod and the lead screw. The feed rod actually has a clutch on it, so if you really want to turn to a stop, it'll do that and then stop the clutch. The downside is if you take really heavy cuts, you can get the clutch to slip. About a 1/4 inch depth of cut is about all I can get in steel, like 10-18 mild steel, before it will slip the clutch unless I have a very slow feed rate. Realistically though, that's starting to run out of horsepower. It's just got a 2 horsepower motor on it. Let's see what else. It is very much like any of the other Chinese lathes in terms of design. It's got a very traditional, not traditional in terms of old American or British lathes, but traditional in terms of Chinese lathes. It's kind of modeled after a standard modern, but there's nothing unusual about the controls. Thankfully it does have a carriage mounted on and off lever, reverse, forward and reverse lever. So let me move the camera and we'll try to get some more details. Okay, so the chucks, this machine ships with an 8-inch 3-jaw and an 8-inch 4-jaw. They use a D15 camlock mount. So if I can see, you can see the back of this. Yeah, let me turn that a little. So it's standard in terms of it's a D1, but D15 turns out to be kind of an oddball size. It's a lot beefier than a D14, which is good. Gives it more rigidity, more mass. The downside is the D16s and 4s are way more common. So you have to hunt a little bit more for other adapters. I've planned to replace both of these chucks as soon as I can, as soon as the money allows. Oh, there goes my furnace. Hang on, let me shut that off. Okay, sorry about that. It's 20 degrees outside, it's very cold, and my furnace just kicked on and it's loud because it's in the same room as my shop. Anyway, yeah, these are an 8-inch. I'd like a 10-inch 4-jaw, and that's probably going to be my next purchase for the lathe. So that will be good. There's nothing really wrong with the 4-jaw that's on it. It actually works pretty good. You can see the cradle I made out of some 2x4s, which makes changing the chucks a lot safer. Than you don't risk dropping them on the carriage, and it helps. It almost lines the pins up very nicely. So that works good. Not too much to complain about. The 4-jaw is actually not too bad. The 3-jaw, when the lathe first arrived, it was basically unusable. The scroll was full of cast iron chips, as was the bore of the lathe, the spindle bore. So I mean, it wasn't terrible. Had to clean it out. After that it was fine. On the upside, the headstock gearbox, which you read horror stories of some of the Chinese lathes having metal shavings and all kinds of debris inside of them. This one was clean. It didn't have anything, which was really good. It's had 2 oil changes. I actually did an oil change on it yesterday, and it was just nothing in there. It was really nice. I was able to wipe it out without any trouble. It does leak a little bit of oil out of the back, not a lot. It drips a little bit. I have a cookie pan to collect it, so I just clean that out every now and then. Let's see. Let me move the camera and see what else we can see. Okay, so in terms of the carriage, it's pretty standard. It's got about, I think it's spec'd at 3 inches of travel on the compound. Let's see what we actually can get here. So we got 2 3/8 to the end. I've never actually measured it before. And it goes by about 1 1/16", so you get about 3 5/16. So that's not too bad, or something like that. Anyway, and it's got roughly 7 inches of travel on the cross feed, so that works fine. One thing that does kind of suck, let me see if I can get the camera in a little closer. It's, again, not a big deal because they're not accurate anyway, is the graduations on the compound only go to 60 degrees on either side. So for threading at 29.5, it's actually doesn't have a mark there, which is fine. You kind of have to interpolate anyway because they're never very accurate. This one, you can see a mark on here now. It was almost indiscernible when the lathe when it arrived, so I put a square on there and marked it as close as I could get it. What I did is I turned it 90 degrees, indicated it, and went off of the 0. There's a line under the 0, and I did the same on the other side. These, I believe, are 6mm socket head cap screws. It actually locks up pretty well. This is a lock screw for the compound. There's one like it on the side for the cross slide. Let me bring this over to the other side real quick. Okay, on this side, it's very much, just like most other lathes. It had, right here it had just a socket head cap screw. I ordered up this lever from McMaster Car, which is just a lever, and it's actually it's indexable. So I have it set so that when it's like this, it locks off the carriage, and then that quarter turn loosens it up nicely. That is a big improvement over having to use an Allen wrench, so that's worth spending the 10 or 15 bucks on if you don't want to make one yourself. And the indexable, it's easy to make the lever and a screw. The indexable part's the tricky bit. I did machine a small bushing to go underneath there just to make sure that this did not touch the carriage. It was just a little short. You can see this one has a digital readout. That was factory installed. There was a problem with that, and I don't know if you can see it in a picture. I think you can. But right here, you can see it's been cut out. That was me, because right back here, can it show? Yeah, you can see. Anyway, this hit the mount for the work light, so that obviously was not good. I have seen in the photos of the ones that they're shipping now, they've added a bar in here, and this whole thing is spaced back a little bit, which is a better solution. For me, I just cut it because I needed it to be usable quickly. So, and it works fine. There's no problems. And other than that, there's no real problems with it. It all works fine. Accuracy-wise, actually, I can hold a couple tenths without any trouble at all. So, I mean, for what you really want a lathe to do, it does, which is a good thing. Let's see. I'll show you the tailstock, which is nothing really exceptional, but we'll go over it real quick. So it's got 4 inches of travel. It does have thousandths on the hand wheel. I have not checked to see how accurate they are. What I do is, if for drilling holes, it's fine. The lock pulls up, and when I got it, it was a little bit loose. You can adjust it underneath. It's no big deal. The trick is you have to line it up to one of these holes that come under with the socket, and if you get it too tight and slide it, it's almost impossible to get off, so you got to be really careful with that. The quill locks right here, it works fine. This is not the stock chuck, it's a Jacobs 18-in, I think it's an 18-in ball bearing chuck, which it's amazingly, you drill much better holes. This is the stock chuck, make sure that shows up in frame, yeah. This is the stock chuck. It holds drill bits. It's about as good a thing as I can say about it. It is worth getting a better chuck. I have not tried to measure the run out, but I am given that drill bits don't always line up right, I'm 100% certain it's not straight. This, you take a 1/2 inch drill and you drill it, it's about 2/10 over. It drills so much better holes. I also have it's a Grizzly, but it's a nice quick release, keyless chuck. That works pretty well as well. But the stock chuck, it's just not good. In my opinion, it's really not very good. Let me move the camera and we'll see the other half. Okay, this is obviously the business end of the head. I have changed the drive belts out for the link belts. These ones are actually from Harbor Freight, but they're actually quite nice. They work good. It's interesting if you put marks on them. The pulleys must be slightly different sizes because they do move next to each other. So nothing really unusual here. It does have a magnetic pickup and 4 magnets in this lock collar on the spindle that runs the tachometer. Right now I got a 30 gear on 30 tooth. So the big idler gear in the middle is 120 and a 127 tooth. There's a little video on how to change these because I had some interest in that. The 127 is for cutting metric threads. The 120 is for imperial threads. So for me, it almost never gets changed, although I do have some metric threads to cut one of these days. So a couple other things just for general maintenance. Let me see if this shows up in the picture. Let me move the camera slightly here. Okay, so the folks who designed, and I'm sure it's not the people at Precision Matthews, I'm sure it's some dudes in China somewhere. Anyway, the people that designed where the drain plugs go for this obviously have no clue. It's kind of like old cars that were impossible to work on. It's just idiotic. This back here is the drain screw for the gearbox. Bad enough you have to take the gears off. That's not so bad. But you have cables, and there's just no way to take that out and not make a huge mess while you're draining the gearbox. I know some people have made little funnels, and you could take metal tape and whatnot and do that. It's just not a cool thing to do. The way I drain the gearbox oil is I have a thing called a Liquivac, Liquivac, and it's made for lawnmowers and small engines, but it basically holds about 3 quarts of oil, and it's got a hose. You can just stick it down into and I took the whole cover off so I could suction it all out and do it, but you can put it in there and just pump, and it pumps the oil out, and it's vastly easier. So in my opinion, that is a huge fail. It's awful. These down here are the ones for make sure that shows up in the frame. It does. So, maybe not. Move the camera down. There we go. Okay, so this drain plug is for the transmission for the feed gears, and this is its fill plug. So the drain plug actually turns out not to be so bad because you can set a small little bowl in there and catch it. Filling it is a pain in the butt because there's no way to pour it in easily. I ended up putting a hose in there and just holding a funnel there, and wow, it's not pretty. It's effective, and it didn't leak and didn't make much of a mess. So the main gearbox drain, huge fail. Its filler plug's up on top where it belongs. Now there's hard to put a filler plug up on top, so I cut them a little slack, and the drain plug's not bad. And the good part is they don't leak. They do have copper gaskets, copper washers. Other than that, it's very standard. Nothing too unusual there. It's just got the banjo for changing the gear mesh, all that. Let's see, what else is there? Real quick. It's got a sight glass. Let me see here if it shows up. Hang on, let me move the camera. So you got a sight glass here for the quick change box, and there is a sight glass here for the spindle oil, and then there's another sight glass on the Carriage for its oil. This thing, when it shipped, it had no oil for the spindle gearbox, the main headstock box. There was oil in the quick change box, and there was oil in the Carriage. When I drained the oil into Carriage, it looked like half of it looked like milk and half of it looked like oil, so it had water and some other hideous stuff in it. The oil out of the feed gearbox was actually seemed fine. It didn't smell bad, it didn't look bad, but I just changed it all as a matter of course because it was awful. Well, it was just, you do. There's another little video on modifying. This is the micrometer. I use the term very loosely, but it does have a dial. It's a micrometer Carriage stop. In stock form, it's not entirely useless, but almost. The two bolts to clamp it down are underneath here, and with the lead screw there, unless you use a ball driver, it's a pain in the butt, and if you have to move it, it's a huge pain in the butt. So I did a little modification. This is a 1/4 bolt, and it goes through and it's threaded into that. I should have set it back up 50 thousandths from the front, but I didn't think about it when I did it. Just threaded it for an 832 screw, so you can turn it, lock it, and it works actually quite well. I faced that off, so it's actually flat on the end. It wasn't before. But if I lock it, tighten it down, and bring the Carriage over to it, it'll repeat within a couple tenths, or usually within 1/10. So that's actually become very useful for some parts I made that require a lot of boring to a specific depth. So that's pretty good. Let me put the back cover on. I'll fire it up and you can hear how it runs. It's actually pretty quiet considering what it is. Okay, so being that this machine has a variable speed drive, the motor that's on it was made for that. What that means is it's got an auxiliary fan that anytime the lathe is powered on, that fan runs. Because at the lowest speed, the motor is only running at 13 hertz instead of 60. So it's not turning very fast, so any built-in cooling fan would not turn fast enough to keep the motor cool, so it has forced air, which is great, except for, of course, you can hear it running all the time. It's not bad. You'll hear it here in a second. Before I forget, there is a couple other little things I wanted to say. If you look down here, it has a foot brake, which is great, except it's not really a brake. All it is a giant pedal attached to a micro switch. So when you step on it, it's exactly the same as hitting the emergency stop or just pulling the lever and putting it in stop. So it doesn't actually brake, and it's by design. It's not like a defect where they forgot it. I looked through the manual and it's definitely designed that way. Presumably because if the variable speed motor doesn't like being just hard broke, I don't know. In any case, that's just a fact. Another thing, and you can't see it, and I am not even going to remotely try to get in there, in the base of the underneath the tail end is the coolant pump and sump. The coolant pump wasn't actually bolted in, it was just sitting in there loose, and the bolts and nuts were in there, it just wasn't attached, it was just sitting loose. So obviously that was not a big deal, but just something to, I guess it's kind of an attention to detail thing, which for some reason the Chinese, at least with machine tools, don't seem to be really good at. It's just my opinion, I could be wrong. But I bought a Taiwanese mill from Precision Matthews, and it's definitely in a different class. It is a very nice machine, and one of these days I'll do a little video on that. I really, really like it. So let me fire this up so you can hear what it sounds like. It's actually pretty quiet, but it's not too bad. So you can hear the fan running. It's not too bad. So in low gear, we turn the variable speed down. So in low gear, you can see, sorry, I shouldn't walk in front of the camera, but anyway, Chuck's turning slow. It says, I don't know if you can see it. Try to zoom in on it a little bit. It says 50 RPM. It's supposed to, sometimes it says 40. So in any case, it's not very fast. It's 40, 50 RPM. So, and I have looked at the VFD. It's 13 hertz going to the motor at that speed. So low gear will go from 40 or 50 to about 400 RPM. So there's roughly halfway. So that's 250 RPM. So that's full speed in low gear, 400 RPM. It's reasonably quiet. It's not bad. We'll just stop it. I don't want to walk in front of the camera. So put it in high gear, and I'm going to have to turn it back on. So that's it's the slowest it'll go in top gear, high range. So that's 210, and it's fairly quiet, but it's about halfway. So that's 1100 RPM. So that's wide open. It says 1750, 1760. It'll vary a little bit because, you know, voltage and all that stuff. But it holds speed pretty constant when I'm turning, so it's really pretty good. And the really nice thing about the variable speed is if you're cutting and it's either a little faster, a little slower, you don't have to stop. You can just turn it. Lately I've been doing cutting some copper, and it seems really fussy about how fast it's turning. 300 RPM is a little slow, 500 RPM is a little fast, and at 400 I get a beautiful finish. Even though it's non-ferrous and soft, it's gummy and wants to stick, and so it's kind of nice. So that works really well. This, make sure that shows up in the frame, yeah. This guy is the feed screw carriage direction. And fortunately, and I know not all lathes are like this, this one, when it's pointing left, carriage comes left or goes in cross slide. And I should have done that. When it's to the right, it goes to the right. And it's got a neutral, and it gets a little quieter then because it disengages the gears. Let's see. If it's stopped, it does have a jog mode, which is this guy right here. So I almost never use it, but it does have one. So let's see, I'll show you the foot brake. So you step the foot brake, it stops fairly quick, but if it's at high speed, so that's 1100 RPM. You step on the brake, it stops reasonably quick. Now I'll do exactly the same thing with the control lever. 1100, stop. It stops about the same speed. It's just a micro switch. It just turns it off and engages the motor brake. I think that's about all. This one has a factory installed DRO. I don't know how you pronounce it. I guess it's EASSON, maybe EASSON. It actually works quite well. There was, like I said, other than the interference on the carriage, did I not turn it on? Apparently not. Push the switch only halfway. Anyway, you can see that boot up. One of the things that I really, really like about the DRO is it has multiple tools. So for repetitive things where I have an inside radius tool, an outside radius tool, a facing tool, you know, I can set it up on the first one, put a new part in the collet, and just go through the three tools in a couple of minutes, and it used to take me half an hour to get everything set right. So the DRO has proven hugely useful. It's pretty accurate as far as I can tell. Usually I can. I don't always trust it, but if I measure the diameter and you punch it in and say, okay, I'm at 1.28, and you can drive it in to usually within a couple tenths of what it says it is, which you get flex in the part and how deep a cut you take, all that. So really, it's not too bad. One other thing I'll cover. Chuck keys. Let's see, where am I here? All right. So these are pretty lousy. This one's got a cheesy raised knurl. You can see it doesn't stay in. It'll just go through. This one fits the 3-jaw. Yeah, so it isn't. It's tolerable. This one fits the 4-jaw, and it also fits the cam lock. The problem is it just barely clears the headstock. So on my short list of things to make is a chuck key, and it's fine for actually using in the chuck, but for the cam lock, it's terrible. I mean, at least for me, it's terrible. I wish it was, and it doesn't need to be a lot bigger, inch or two longer, because then I could get in here and not try to bust my knuckles. I don't know, you can probably see that, but it's real easy to bust your knuckles on the headstock. And it's cast iron. It sucks. It hurts. So, and I'd like it to have a little bit longer shaft. So I've got some 3/4 inch D2 drill rod, which is awful to work with, but it will be plenty strong. So maybe the next week or two I'll make a new one of those. I keep tolerating it. That's about all I can say. I haven't. It's annoyed me, but not enough to actually make one. So let's see. Is that about it? I think it's about it. It's got a Chinese knockoff of an Aloris tool post. Let's see if I can get a better view of that. And it works okay. It's not great, but it's repeatable, and that's the important part. So if I drop, that's an ugly tool. So if I drop something in and tighten it, it repeats, good enough that I can hold a couple tenths with it without any trouble. So that's good. I have bought a lot of the holders. One of the things that you can sometimes get are the XL versions. This is a B-size tool post, which means that normally the holders are only 5/8. They sell an XL version that's 3/4, or of course you can just put it in the mill and take 1/8 of an inch off if it's not hardened, which most of these aren't. But I have, I don't know, 15 of those. They're very useful. This is just an old, it was a brazed carbide insert that died, that it had chipped off, and I've had it forever. I just cut it off, drilled a hole, and made a little spud and mounted an indicator. So the nice thing is there's always an on-center indicator, and it's worth giving up a holder for, in my opinion. It's quicker than breaking out that regular indicator with the mag base. Not a big deal. I think it shows. Let's see. I made a custom nut and handle, so that and I'm not going to loosen it because it's square right now. But if you need to do a quickie, you can just change it real quick. John Mills in the UK, Double Boost on YouTube. I kept seeing it on his lathe, and I decided I had to have one, and it's definitely not my design. I just saw his and made one, and it works good. This, oddly enough, for being a Chinese lathe where everything is metric, the threads on the tool post are 5/8. I think 5/8 18 was the tap size. So that's about it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps some. Oh, I guess I should go the last part. So I guess the final question is would I buy it again? Is it good enough that the parts that piss me off are acceptable? In this case it is. Precision Matthews was great to deal with. No complaints about them. I did get one that was in stock, so it was about 3 weeks from the day I ordered it to when it was in my shop. About a week of that was the trucking company. It stopped moving in Chicago, and after a few days of sitting there, I got them on the phone. They said, "Oh, we found it sitting in the warehouse. We'll get it on truck tomorrow." So that was about 5 days of the freight company's fault. But the Precision Matthews folks said they would get it out the door within a couple weeks, and they did. They were absolutely good to their word. I think all in, with all the options I ordered, it was about $5,800 plus a little liftgate service. This thing weighs about 1,800 pounds. It was just at the limit of what they could do on the liftgate. The truck driver helped me get it in the shop, which was really good. Getting it off of the pallet was it was an entertaining exercise. I used an engine hoist and a lot of wood blocks, but it worked out, and a sawzall, and I got it up on the ground safely, leveled, no trouble. I guess that's about it. So yes, I'd buy another one. Would I like to have a little bit higher quality fit and finish? Absolutely. The Taiwanese machines are really nice, from what I can tell, based on my mill, which I got a mill from Precision Matthews. It's a lovely piece of equipment, and I can't imagine it being any better. Actually, it's really nice. Let's see. When I first got this, before I owned this, I had a lathe master. It was an 8x14, which I had for 9 years, and it served me well, but I kept getting projects I just couldn't do. So when I got this, I got it out, I uncrated it, and I thought, holy crap, it's huge. I'll never need anything bigger. So that was in March. I ordered in February, I got it in March. So that was in March. So, you know, roughly 8-9 months ago, when I set it down here, I thought, wow, I'm glad I didn't get anything bigger. Now I actually think I wish I would have gotten something a little bigger. But the problem is that my budget wouldn't have stood anything bigger that was new, and Colorado is not the manufacturing center of the world. So there are occasionally some used machinery available, but a lot of times it's really beat up, and they want too much for it, frankly. I looked at a few. They were overpriced for what they were, in my opinion. I don't need a bigger machine most of the time. I just wish it was a little bigger. I wish the carriage was a little beefier, and the ways were a little further apart, just for more rigidity. There are times, though, even with this one, that it's hard to make small parts. And for that, I actually have like a, let's see, I got this really nice little 6-inch 4-jaw that a gentleman gave me, and it's just this beautiful old Skinner chuck, and I just chuck it up inside the 3-jaw, and then you can make small parts pretty easily. It's a beautiful chuck. I hate to even chuck it up because it's so pretty. I actually might make a spindle for it just to go in there so that it doesn't end up with jaw marks on the outside. I don't know, the thing must be 50 or 60 years old, and it's just almost brand new. It's beautiful. Anyway, that beep is my wife calling me for dinner. I hope this helps somebody. Bye.